And welcome back to Pick of the Week, where we look at the state of the winter awards races. This week we're looking at the Golden Globes television, musical, or comedy series category. I'm Michael Schneider.
I'm Danielle Terciano. So Mike, I have to say this is always one of my favorite categories, particularly because the HFPA often likes to award something that's new.
Yeah.
And sometimes very female focused, which I'll be honest, that's something I like to see. So if it's okay with you, I wanted to start with one of those contenders because Showtime has On Becoming a God in Central Florida this year.
Dream a big dream.
Success is in your blood, fella.
I feel like it's a really interesting entry because Kirsten Dunst stars, executive produces, and it was one of those shows where it was originally produced for YouTube, and I'll be honest, I didn't really know a lot about it at that point, and then when Showtime picked it up, it suddenly felt like it was just bigger.
Yeah, and I think that's where the size of the HFPA actually benefits a show like that, because if you have someone like a Kirsten Dunst who is out there campaigning and charming the membership,
right,
then that makes a huge difference. Now, of course, if we want to talk about the front runners, Fleabag, of course.
You know when you've done everything?
Sort of surprised a little bit at the Emmys, although we were starting to predict toward the end of the Emmy race that it might break through. It broke through and it beat out Veep, which on the other hand is probably at this point not as much of a front runner because it does feel like, well, Veep had its moment and no one's really talking about it, even though it was its final season, as much as they're still talking about Fleabag.
Right. I think when we look at the final seasons of shows, one of the ones that has, I think, a little bit more heat in this race is The Good Place.
Your key is ringing.
I have a question for you.
It is the final season, and it's coming off of a nomination last year, and so it's been steadily gaining traction.
Yeah, so there are some new contenders. Not a lot of buzz though for some of them. So the question is, new shows like The Politician.
I'm running for student body president. That is why I'm proud to introduce my running mate today, Infinity Jackson.
It's a contender, but I don't think it's a front runner necessarily. You have another Netflix show, Living with Yourself. Paul Rudd, who doesn't love Paul Rudd?
The path of life brings us many troubles.
With a lot of contenders, I don't know if it's at the top of the pack.
Right. It's interesting because I feel like this year, there may be fewer of the new shows that crack into this race. Kaminsky Method from Netflix won last year and is a very strong contender for season 2. Michael Douglas and Alan Arkin, I feel like that boosts things a little bit.
Yeah.
And of course, the marvelous Mrs Maisel from Amazon. I mean, it's been nominated for 2 years in a row. It won the first year it was nominated, and now it's launching its 3rd season, which they're campaigning hard still for that show.
They still are. And another show we shouldn't forget about is Barry.
Do you think I'm a bad person, Mr. Cousineau?
I think you are deeply human.
It's a great show. Bill Hader is fantastic. And it's another one that I think is definitely in the hunt for a nomination at the very least. So I think you're right in that there's an embarrassment of riches of returning shows, which I think is going to limit a lot of the new shows from reaching in this time.
I agree.
Well, why don't we talk about Pick of the Week? That's the name of this segment. So
mine is On Becoming a God in Central Florida for Showtime. I think that it does a really interesting kind of social experiment. It's really telling a story about the American dream and what it is to kind of feel like you've been against it your whole life and you're given this chance to rise, but it's with a pyramid scheme where if you rise, other people maybe fall. So there's a lot psychologically at play in the show, and it's obviously very funny on top of that.
Yeah. Well, my pick is another show that we mentioned, The Good Place. And speaking of social experiments, it's a show that's all about trying to be a better person. And what does it mean to be good? When you have a legend like Ted Danson at the heart of it. Kristen Bell, that's an amazing cast. And I'm going to miss that group of people. And I'm going to miss that show. So one last shout out to The Good Place.
What is the bad place like?
Well, it doesn't sound awesome.
Well, that does it for this edition of Pick of the Week. Be sure to check out Variety.com for your latest awards news and scoop. I'm Michael Schneider.
I'm Danielle Terciano. Thanks for watching.
We'll see you again next time.